Hi, I'm Christina and this is a book review of The Wall by Marlen Haushofer. So this is a classic dystopian fiction novel and it was published in 1963. It was written originally in German and then it was translated into English by Sean Whiteside. Now, I read this book on the recommendation of Emily over at Books with Emily Fox, who will of course link down below, but I'm sure you've heard of her. She's read lots of different dystopian science fiction novels, and I most recently read I Who Have Never Known Men on her recommendation, and I absolutely love that book. And that is another kind of older science fiction novel, so I thought I really enjoyed that one that she recommended. I'm going to read this one next, and I also really enjoyed it. So the main character is a woman and she's staying in a hunting lodge in the mountains of Austria, and this hunting lodge belongs to her cousin and she's staying there on vacation with them. And then one day a wall appears overnight. It's an invisible wall which is completely impossible to pass through or go over or go under, and she can see through the wall and she can see a man on the other side, and he's standing completely motionless and he isn't alive essentially. And on the other side of the wall she can see that animals are in the same motionless state. So she knows for a fact that all the people on the other side of the wall are essentially dead to her, and she has no way of going across the wall. And all of the other people who she knows, like the cousin and the partner, they're at the pub, and she is the only person alive on this side of the wall. But she isn't completely alone. She has some animals for company. So there is a Bavarian bloodhound called Lynx who belongs to the cousin and the partner, and he was staying behind at the hunting lodge when they went to the pub, so she still has this dog with her. And there is also a cow that she finds, and she names this cow Bella. And then there's also a cat who arrives about a month. Well, she's there for about a month with the cow and the dog, and this cat arrives and she doesn't name the cat, but she also has this cat. And essentially we're just watching this one woman survive completely alone from human company, but she has some company of animals, and just seeing basically how she survives. And she's writing this story down in a series of notebooks. So some time has passed and now she is writing an account of what has happened. And I don't think she's expecting anyone to read the account of what has happened. I think she's doing it partly for herself, to make an account of her life. And yeah, she's trying to come to terms with a few things that have happened to her. So it's a very kind of slow and steady kind of story. There's no massive overriding plot, there's not loads of twists or turns. It's very kind of slow and steady and a very gentle story, I would say. And you don't expect big things. There's no real answers either, similar to I Who Have Never Known Men. There's no big answer as to who has made the wall or why the wall is here. The only thing she kind of muses on is the fact that she thinks a particular state has made this wall in some kind of act of war, perhaps. And it sounds like the perfect act of war, in the sense that you've divided a nation and everybody on one side of the wall, including all the animals, are dead. But obviously the land remains untouched, all the plants and everything is okay. So from a kind of point of view, the land is still there to be taken by the victor of this war that she assumes might have happened. But ultimately she doesn't know anything at all, and she has no way of knowing anything at all because she has no one to communicate with, and no way to communicate with them even if there was anyone to communicate with. So we're just kind of watching her try to survive, and we watch her go through the different seasons and kind of prosper in summer and find the winter's very difficult. And she's essentially learning life skills because she doesn't know how to do so many things, and she starts kind of planting a vegetable garden and then harvesting her vegetables and keeping some back, and then, you know, planting more, and then she's checking through the crops and she's making sure she's feeding her animals. So she's getting hay and she's giving it to her cow, and then she's giving it to some of the deers in the winter when they're struggling to survive. And it's very, yeah, I would say it's a very gentle story, and I found it very interesting. And I really did wish the best for her and all her animals, and I was very much just, I did want to know, why has this happened? Who has done this? How did the wall come to be? What is it made of? Can you not try and get through it? Can you not get under it? Well, what does any of this mean? Who did this? Is it a war? Is it the end of the world? Is it aliens? What's happening? There were so many questions that I wanted answered, and none of them were answered, and I still had a really, really good time with it. Honestly, normally with these kind of open-ended stories, I'm not normally a huge fan of them because I want that world building and I want you to tell me the whys and the hows and stuff. But because the story was so engaging, even though so very little happened, and I think it very easily could have slipped into boredom because a lot of it is very monotonous. A lot of her life really is just looking after her cow and then feeding the dog and feeding the cat and feeding herself and then checking on the vegetables and then doing the crops and then cutting wood and then starting fires. Like, a lot of her life is just monotonous jobs over and over again to ensure she survives and to ensure her animals survive. So it's not the most exciting of lives, for example, but I think I wasn't bored, even though I feel like it could have been very, very easy for this book to just become boring, but I wasn't. And I was always sitting there with all these questions I want answered. And like I say, none of them were answered, and yet I still had a really good time with it. And I'm not sure if it really matters why anything happened. Like, ultimately, for her, all of these things have happened, and even if she knew why or how or who, it wouldn't really have affected anything, you know, in her immediate life. She has to feed herself, she has to feed her animals, etc. So I really, really enjoyed it, actually. I didn't know 100% what I was going to get. Like I say, I was expecting more of the world building and more of the answers, because I think it also could have been an incredibly interesting book to answer all of these questions, like who out there made this invisible wall? How did they make it? How did they construct it? How was it sent there? It's so interesting. There's so many different avenues it could have explored, and it didn't explore any of them, and yet I still had a really, really good time with it, and I would recommend it. And I think the relationship that she builds up with her animals is really lovely. It really is very sweet. And the way they come to depend on one another. So you would think that all of those animals are kind of her dependents and they depend on her, but at the same time, a lot of who she is depends on them too. So like the friendship that she builds up with the dog becomes like her best friend and her confidant. And then the cat is someone that she kind of sleeps next to the cat, and the cat can be a little bit, you know, not always happy to be with her, but they have this lovely relationship. And then the cow is truly dependent on her, but then she's also dependent on the cow for the milk that the cow provides. The cow ends up being pregnant and the cow has a calf, and then that becomes a whole other thing because she doesn't know how to help a cow give birth, for example, and how to ensure everything goes okay. And the cat has some kittens as well, which is really nice. And yeah, I actually really enjoyed it. And to be honest with you, not very much actually happens in the whole story. If I sat you down and just told you what happened in the story, not very much happens at all. I mean, from the start of the book, things happen and then not much else actually happens, but I still really enjoyed it, and I would highly recommend it. So yeah, I think I'm really enjoying these kind of classic dystopian science fiction books. It was a really good one, and I would recommend that you read it. And like I say, it's obviously been published in the 60s, and yet I think it's still very relevant to today, and these things could happen. I mean, I think the idea is maybe people are thinking about the Cold War when this has been written, and yeah, it's still very relevant to today. So thank you so much for watching this. If you have read this book, I would love to know what you thought of it down in the comments below. And if you haven't read it and I've encouraged you to read it, definitely let me know that too. And if you have any other recommendations for books that have similar themes, kind of like end of the world, people being isolated from society and trying to survive, like a survival story, definitely let me know, because yeah, I would love to read more. All right, see you in the next one.